The rooftop restaurant shimmered under fairy lights as laughter echoed through the cool night air. Wine glasses clinked, heels tapped lightly on the wooden deck, and jazz music hummed through hidden speakers. It was a celebration, one I had been anticipating for weeks. Everyone from the Chicago regional office was there, dressed to the nines. And tonight, I was supposed to be the guest of honor. My name's Julia Benton. I had worked at Grantham Logistics for nearly 6 years. 6 years of late nights, complex project recoveries, and keeping the entire operations team afloat during crisis after crisis. My boss, Everett Blake, had dropped more than enough hints that the promotion to regional director was mine. Everyone knew it. My team, the HR director. Even Everett's assistant, who had told me weeks ago to start thinking about office paint colors. So I was ready. My slate gray dress was sleek and confident. I had curled my hair that morning with a flutter of nerves. My husband, Nate, had kissed me on the cheek and said, "They'd be idiots not to give it to you." I believed him. At 7:43 p.m., Everett stood and tapped his spoon against his champagne glass. The sound cut through the chatter like a bell. Conversations paused. All eyes turned to him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Everett said, grinning broadly. "We've had an amazing quarter, record growth, new contracts, and incredible teamwork. But tonight is also about celebrating change." My heart skipped. I straightened in my seat, hands folded neatly in my lap. And that brings me to a very special announcement. We've found the perfect person to lead this team into our next phase of growth. She's smart, driven, and brings a fresh perspective to our operations. My smile froze. Wait, he wasn't talking about me. Everett turned to the tall blonde sitting 3 seats down. "Caitlin Monroe, welcome as our new regional director." Applause erupted around me. Chairs shuffled. Glasses were raised. Caitlin, who joined the company just 3 months ago as a project lead, stood and smiled graciously. Someone even started a chant. "Caitlin, Caitlin!" I sat there, frozen, hands still in my lap, the blood draining from my face. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Everett continued. "Julia, thank you for everything you've done for the team. You've been a real asset. Asset, not leader, not director, not even a promotion. Just an asset." My jaw clenched. My palms were damp. I forced a tight smile and clapped. Because what else could I do? Throw my wine glass? Storm out? No, I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Caitlin beamed and hugged Everett. He laughed like he had just handed her an Oscar. I didn't even look at her. My coworker Eric leaned over and whispered, "Julia? I thought that was yours." I nodded, keeping my fake smile frozen in place. So did I. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I don't remember dessert. I don't remember the speeches. I only remember slipping away quietly, taking the elevator down alone, and walking through the cold Chicago streets with the sound of Caitlin's laughter echoing behind me. When I got home, I didn't cry. I sat on the couch in silence, still in my dress, shoes kicked off, staring at the wall. Nate came in from the kitchen with a beer. "How'd it go?" I stared at him, eyes hollow. "They gave it to Caitlin." He blinked. "Wait, who?" "The new girl." Silence. "You're kidding." I shook my head slowly. He set the beer down. "But Everett promised you. He literally told us last month that you were the front runner." He lied. And that was the moment something inside me shifted. A cold, razor-sharp clarity. They never saw me as a leader. They saw me as the fixer, the dependable one. The woman who could pick up the slack, but never take the credit. But that ended tonight. I stood, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. "Nate?" I said. "Yeah? I'm resigning." His eyebrows shot up. "Now?" "Yes." I drafted the email in 3 minutes flat. Subject, formal resignation. "Dear Everett, please consider this my immediate resignation from Grantham Logistics. I appreciate the opportunities given to me during my tenure. I will not be returning to the office. Regards, Julia Benton." I clicked send and leaned back in my chair. It didn't feel scary. It felt powerful. Nate exhaled. "Babe, are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything. That night, I didn't cry. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. But come Monday morning, I had a new plan. And Everett? He was about to find out what happens when you push the wrong woman too far. Monday morning arrived, gray skies blanketing the city. The kind of weather that made people want to stay in bed. But not me. I woke up before my alarm. No work outfit, no rushing out the door to beat traffic, no checking Slack before I brushed my teeth. Instead, I brewed a strong cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my inbox. There it was, exactly what I expected. Subject: please call me. Urgent. From Everett Blake. I smirked. I sipped my coffee and stared at the email. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Everett was probably panicking, trying to do damage control after realizing I wasn't joking when I sent that resignation. I closed my laptop and picked up my phone instead. One quick call. Hey Darren, it's Julia Benton. A beat. Then excitement. Julia, hey wow, it's been forever. What's up? I'm finally free, I said, and I'm looking for my next opportunity. You once said if I ever left Grantham, I should call you first. There was no hesitation. Come in tomorrow, let's talk. Just like that, a door opened. I spent the rest of the day updating my resume and LinkedIn profile. I didn't mention the promotion. I didn't need to. My inbox flooded with messages anyway. Heard what happened. Their loss. If you're looking, we're hiring. Let's talk. I worked with you once on a warehouse crisis. You're brilliant. You shouldn't have been passed over. By lunchtime, I had 6 interviews lined up, but Everett? He still didn't get it. At 1:12 p.m., another email arrived. Subject: can we talk, please, from Everett Blake. I didn't reply. At 3:04 p.m., a text. Julia, I'm really sorry, I need to explain. Please call me. Still nothing. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but I knew this man. I had seen how he operated for 6 years. The only time he cared was when he realized something was at risk, his reputation, his control, or his ability to look good to the board. Now he had neither. By 5 p.m., the whispers had started. Riley, one of the junior analysts I used to mentor, messaged me on Instagram. OMG, everyone at the office is losing it. Your resignation hit harder than Caitlin's promotion. I laughed. I hadn't even meant for it to be dramatic. But apparently people noticed. Apparently, my departure had stirred the pot in ways I hadn't expected. Tuesday morning, I put on my best blazer and walked into the headquarters of Westbridge Solutions, Darren's company. Unlike Grantham, this place felt alive. Modern, collaborative, buzzing with ideas. People greeted each other like actual humans, not just titles on email chains. Darren met me in the lobby and led me to a sleek, glass-walled conference room. You still drink your coffee black? He asked with a grin. I do. Stronger the better. He slid a cup across the table. Good, because we're going to talk fast. What followed was the easiest, most natural interview of my life. Darren knew my work. He remembered the chaos I cleaned up after Grantham's warehouse system meltdown 3 years ago. He brought up specific projects, specific numbers, things Everett never even acknowledged. So here's what I'm thinking, he said, leaning forward. Director of Strategy, full autonomy, your own team, your own budget. We're expanding, and I want someone who knows how to scale smart. My chest tightened. Darren, that's incredible. You deserve it, he said, matter of fact, and I'd be lucky to have you here. We shook hands. I left the building floating. But that wasn't the best part. That afternoon, something happened I didn't expect. My LinkedIn post, the one I wrote after my resignation, started gaining traction. It was short, simple. After 6 incredible years at Grantham Logistics, I've made the difficult decision to step away. While I'm proud of the work I've done and grateful for the people I've worked with, I believe in recognizing your value and walking away when it's no longer seen. Here's to new beginnings. In under 24 hours, it had over 20,000 views, hundreds of comments, from colleagues, strangers, executives, recruiters. People shared their own stories of being overlooked, of being passed up, of finally choosing themselves. By the next morning, I had 11 interview requests, and 3 companies had reached out directly asking for meetings at your earliest convenience. Grantham, they were getting nervous. I knew it because Everett finally stopped pretending. He called me 4 times in a row, no voicemail, just endless rings. At 10:47 a.m. my phone buzzed again. A new email. Subject: we need to talk now. Please respond. Julia, we need to speak. The board is asking questions. Clients are calling. Your post is getting a lot of attention and people are assuming things that aren't true. Please call me. Let's clear the air. Everett. Assuming things that aren't true? I laughed out loud. They weren't assuming anything. They knew. And so did I. Everett wasn't worried about me. He was worried about the fallout. Clients were probably wondering why someone with 6 years of experience had suddenly vanished. Employees were likely questioning why the most dedicated woman on the team got passed over for someone with no track record. And Everett? He was scrambling, exactly what he deserved. I didn't respond to the email. Instead, I took a walk to clear my head. Chicago air sharp and clean, the city bustling around me. I passed my old office building and didn't even glance up. I was free. I was wanted. And I was done playing small. Tomorrow, I'd meet with a recruiter from New York. Friday, I'd have lunch with a tech startup founder from Austin. But today, I'd enjoy the chaos I left behind, because Everett may have given Caitlin the title, but I took everything else with me when I walked away. By Thursday morning, I had officially accepted Darren's offer. The contract was signed, the title read, Director of Strategic Development, and the salary, well, let's just say it was more than I ever imagined making at Grantham. But it wasn't just about the money. It was the respect, the autonomy, the freedom to actually build something meaningful. Still, the ripple effects of my resignation hadn't stopped. That morning, my phone buzzed again. It was Rachel, my old coworker at Grantham. Rachel, Julia, you're not going to believe this. 3 of your old clients emailed Richard directly and requested to transfer their contracts because you're not there anymore. I grinned. That didn't surprise me one bit. Let me guess. He panicked? Understatement. He's been in back-to-back meetings with the board. I think they're realizing you weren't as replaceable as they thought. Exactly. I'd spent 6 years making those client relationships bulletproof. I didn't just deliver results. I listened. I followed through. I made them feel like partners, not just accounts. Grantham never understood that I was the glue holding half their biggest deals together. Later that afternoon, Darren called me into a meeting. We've got a situation, he said, but he didn't look worried. He looked amused. Grantham just contacted one of our shared vendors. They're trying to poach them with a better offer. I raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Yup. But here's the kicker. They used your name. Said you had no involvement with vendor strategy here, that you were all smoke and mirrors. I laughed. Wow, they're really reaching. Darren shrugged. It backfired. Vendor Reap emailed me right away asking if you'd like to handle the account personally. So that's what I did. I called the vendor, clarified our vision, and locked them in for a full-year contract. Grantham could undercut prices all they wanted. But trust, loyalty, that couldn't be bought overnight. And Grantham was bleeding. The next day I received a LinkedIn message from Caitlin. Yes. Caitlin, the golden girl, the 3 months and promoted miracle. Caitlin, hey Julia, I know things were awkward, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for how everything played out. I didn't know they were considering you for the role. If I had, I would have said something. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't hate Caitlin. She didn't steal anything. Everett handed it to her. She was just the shiny object they used to keep people distracted. Still, I didn't know her comfort. Julia, thanks for the message, but you were there when they made the announcement. You saw what it did and said nothing. That silence told me everything. I never heard back. Good. By the following Monday, the truth had started to unravel internally at Grantham. A client I once helped save during a crisis had requested a quarterly review, and when they found out I wasn't available, they postponed the meeting until they could reassess the relationship. Everett sent me another email that night. Subject: Let's reconnect. Julia, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Emotions were high. I'd really like the chance to talk. Just the two of us. I believe we both have something to gain from staying on good terms, Everett. It was almost funny. 6 months ago, I would have given anything to have that email, to feel seen, heard, needed. Now I read it with a glass of wine in one hand and zero intention of replying. Instead, I called Darren. Is that business development role still open? I asked. He paused. Not officially. But why? I want to build a team. He grinned through the phone. You're already making moves, huh? Always. By Wednesday, I had pitched a full restructuring of Westbridge's B2B strategy. Darren approved it within the hour. I got to handpick 2 people. Analytical minds, sharp communicators. And I knew exactly who I wanted first. I called Rachel. Come work with me, I said. You've got the brains, and I've got the authority to make sure no one holds you back. She didn't hesitate. Send the offer. Later that night, I got one final message from Grantham's HR. Subject: exit interview request. Julia, we'd appreciate the opportunity to schedule an exit interview with you. Your feedback is invaluable as we work to improve employee experience. I snorted. Feedback? Where was that attitude when I begged for career development? I didn't respond. Instead, I printed the email, folded it neatly, and pinned it to a corkboard above my new desk, right next to a sticky note that said, "Remember who you are, especially when they forget." That Friday, Westbridge closed a multi-million-dollar contract with a shipping company Grantham had been chasing for 2 years. I didn't steal it. They called me. They said, "We'd rather work with someone who shows up and means it." When the deal closed, I took my new team out for drinks. Rachel raised her glass and said, "To Julia, the promotion they missed, but the power they'll never get back." I smiled, because she was right. It had been 3 weeks since I walked away from Grantham Industries. 3 weeks since I turned down Richard Everett's desperate emails, ignored HR's robotic requests, and watched Grantham's ship take on water, client by client. At Westbridge, I was thriving. I had launched a new strategy division, handpicked my team, and locked in a series of high-profile contracts, including one that Grantham had pursued for over 2 years. My title, Director of Strategic Development, meant more than authority. It meant freedom. But the fallout from Grantham wasn't over. One rainy Thursday morning, I was sitting in my glass-walled office, finishing a pitch deck, when my assistant knocked. "Julia, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." I looked up, curious. "Name?" She hesitated. "Richard Everett." I froze. The name dropped like ice into my coffee. "He's here?" I asked, standing. She nodded. "I told him you're in a meeting, but he said he'd wait." I walked to the office door and peered through the blinds. There he was, sitting in the lobby, soaked from the rain, suit wrinkled, eyes tired. The last time I saw Richard, he stood in front of a room full of coworkers, handing my promotion to someone else, while joking that I should take notes. Not today. I opened the door slowly. "Send him in." 10 minutes. Richard entered, trying to muster his old charm. "Julia, you look successful." I didn't offer a handshake. "That's because I am. You've got 10 minutes. Start talking." He chuckled nervously and took a seat. "Listen, I know things didn't end the way either of us wanted, but I came here because I have a proposal. A real one." I raised an eyebrow. "I spoke with the board," he continued. "We realize now that we underestimated you. Your departure, it's cost us. Clients have followed you, revenue's dipped, and Lisa," he sighed, rubbing his forehead. "She's not ready for the role. She's drowning." I folded my arms. "Interesting. And this has what to do with me?" "We want to bring you back. Senior VP of Client Strategy, your own department, your own team, full authority, double your last salary." I stared at him. This was it. The offer I had waited for years to receive, and now it felt empty. "No," I said. Richard blinked. "Wait. Just like that? You haven't even heard the full package." "I don't need to." He leaned forward. "Julia, be smart. Grantham is still one of the top firms in the region. You know the company inside and out. You wouldn't be starting over." "Exactly," I said flatly. "That's the problem. I'd be going back." He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "You want to fix what happened by throwing money and titles at me. But you don't understand. This isn't about that anymore. You had 5 years to invest in me. You chose not to. Now that you're losing money, suddenly I'm valuable again? That's not respect, Richard. That's panic." His jaw tensed. "So you're just going to walk away forever?" I smiled. "I already did." He stood slowly, clearly rattled. "You know, you've changed." "No, Richard," I said, rising to meet him at eye level. "I finally stopped pretending I needed your approval to succeed." He opened his mouth, then shut it. This wasn't the version of me he remembered, and I could tell. It scared him a little. "I'll walk you out," I said with a professional smile. At the lobby, he turned one last time. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," I said, holding the door open, "but at least this one's mine." The door clicked shut behind him. I returned to my office, adrenaline humming through my veins. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even smug. I just felt free. Later that day, Rachel pinged me. "Rachel, word's out. Richard showed up at your office. People are freaking out. What happened?" "Julia, he offered me the moon. I gave it back." "Damn, legend move. Lisa's barely holding it together. Rumor is the board's considering replacing Richard." I sipped my tea. "Julia, tell Lisa to take notes." That night, Darren invited me to a leadership dinner at a rooftop restaurant downtown. The view was stunning, but the conversations were even better. Every person at that table was there because they earned it. No backroom deals, no politics, just passion and performance. When Darren raised his glass for a toast, he said, "To the smartest hire I've ever made, Julia Blake. You didn't just join this company, you elevated it." Everyone clinked glasses. I smiled. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared out at the skyline and thought about everything that had changed in just 1 month. I didn't have a fancy plaque from Grantham. I didn't get their senior manager title. But what I had now, a career I built with my own hands, a team that respected me, clients who followed me, not because of the brand I stood behind, but because of the trust I built, and a voice that could no longer be silenced. Richard would survive, maybe. Lisa might grow into the role, or maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Grantham had underestimated me, but I would never underestimate myself again. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of record growth, expanding teams, and long but satisfying nights at the office. Carter and Associates had become more than a job. It felt like a purpose. My purpose. I didn't think about Grantham much anymore, but Grantham still thought about me. It was a quiet Thursday morning when Darren, our founder, knocked on my office door holding a sealed envelope. "You've got a visitor," he said, arching an eyebrow. Didn't leave a name. Just handed this over and left. I frowned. That's ominous. Darren chuckled and stepped back. "You've been getting a lot of attention lately. Can't say I'm surprised." I waited until he left before opening the envelope. Inside was a formal letter, printed on thick cream stationery. Grantham's logo was embossed in the corner. My stomach tightened. I unfolded the paper and read, "Dear Julia, on behalf of the Executive Board of Grantham Industries, I am writing to formally express our intent to offer you the position of Chief Strategy Officer, effective immediately. This offer includes a substantial signing bonus, complete creative autonomy, a private team, and a compensation package exceeding your current salary by 30%. Should you accept, Richard Everett will transition into an advisory role, effective the same day. We believe this opportunity reflects not only your immense value, but our sincere recognition of past mistakes. Please respond within 48 hours. Sincerely, Lauren Charles, Board Chair, Grantham Industries." I stared at the page, my fingers tightening around the edges. They were offering me Richard's job, his title, his power, his corner office. My first instinct was to laugh, and I did. A short, disbelieving sound that filled the quiet room. They had finally seen my worth. But not when I was begging for it, only now, when I didn't need them. A knock pulled me from my thoughts. Rachel stepped in, holding a coffee. "You okay? You look like someone offered you a small country." I handed her the letter. She read it, then blinked. "Whoa. Yeah. They're offering you his job," I nodded. "And they're admitting they screwed up. Publicly. Bold move," I muttered. "So what are you going to do?" I leaned back in my chair, thinking. I didn't need Grantham anymore. I had a better job, a better team, and a better boss. Carter and Associates had trusted me from day one, without games, without bait-and-switch promotions. But still, part of me wanted to walk back into Grantham. Not for the title, not even for the money, for the closure, to show them what real leadership looked like. I turned to Rachel. "Book me a meeting with Lauren Charles, tomorrow morning." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. "You got it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the last time I'd walked through Grantham's doors. I remembered the tension in Richard's voice, the silence in the office, the sting of being told to take notes. And I remembered walking away with my dignity intact. Now I was walking back in, this time with power. The next morning, I arrived at Grantham's downtown HQ dressed in slate gray, sleek, sharp, intentional. People stared as I passed through the lobby. Whispers followed me into the elevator. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Lauren was already waiting. "Julia," she said warmly, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." Of course. We walked into a conference room overlooking the city. Sunlight poured in through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the table. "I assume you've read the offer," she said. "I have." "And?" I met her eyes. "I'm not interested." Her expression didn't change. She'd expected that. "But I didn't come to say no," I added. "I came to talk." Lauren sat back. "We're listening." I placed both palms on the table. "You want change. You want recovery. But replacing Richard with me won't solve your core problem." And what would? Culture, respect, accountability. You created a structure that rewards loyalty to hierarchy, not results, that favors charm over contribution, that allowed someone like Richard to thrive and someone like me to walk. Lauren said nothing. You want me to clean up his mess. I get it. But if I'm gonna do that, I'm not just taking a title, I'm taking control. She tilted her head. Define control. I report to the board directly, not to Richard, not to anyone left over from the old regime. I build my team from scratch. I restructure strategy, operations, even HR if necessary. And I decide who stays and who goes. Lauren tapped her pen against the table slowly. You're asking for a blank check? No, I said. I'm offering a blueprint for survival. A pause. Then, and what do you want in return? Everything I've earned. A long silence stretched between us. Then she nodded once. You start Monday. I stood, extended my hand. Then we have a deal. As I left the building, I could feel Richard's ghost everywhere. In the halls, in the way employees avoided eye contact, in the tense silence that filled the elevators. He had ruled with ego. I was returning with purpose. Back at Carter and Associates, I sat across from Darren later that day. You're leaving, he said softly. I nodded. They offered me their number 2 role, and total autonomy. He exhaled through his nose. You're too damn good to keep. I didn't come to ask for permission, I said. I came to say thank you. You gave me a place to rebuild. He stood and pulled me into a hug. Then go rebuild something bigger. That weekend I packed my things. On Monday morning, I would return to Grantham. Not as an employee, not as someone waiting for recognition, but as the woman who had already proven she didn't need any of them. And now, she was in charge. The first morning back at Grantham wasn't triumphant, it was silent. I walked through the revolving glass doors not to applause or celebration, but to an eerie hush. Every head turned. Some faces showed shock, others guilt, most confusion. But no one spoke. No one had expected me to come back, least of all Richard. I stepped into the elevator, rising toward the top floor, the executive suite, my new home. When the doors opened, Lauren Charles was waiting for me. Welcome back, Julia, she said. Everyone's in the boardroom. Everyone. Code 4. Richard is about to find out. We walked together down the corridor, her heels clicking beside mine like a war drum. The boardroom loomed ahead, glass walls, high ceilings, and a long table where empires were built or dismantled. Lauren pushed the doors open. 8 board members sat waiting. And, at the end of the table sat Richard Everett. He looked up and froze. His eyes locked on mine, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. He blinked, lips parting, like he wasn't sure if I was real or a ghost from his recent failures. Lauren took her seat. I remained standing. Let's get started, she said. She turned to me. Julia, as discussed, today you'll outline your 90-day transition plan. Richard straightened. Transition plan? Lauren didn't look at him. Julia smiled. Yes, I said smoothly. As of this morning, I'm the new Chief Strategy Officer. I'll be overseeing operations, restructuring leadership, and implementing new performance metrics company-wide. Richard's face drained of color. You can't be serious, he said, half rising from his chair. Lauren finally met his gaze. You've been moved into an advisory role, Richard. The board voted unanimously. You're replacing me with her? I looked him dead in the eye. No, Richard. You replaced yourself the moment you mistook manipulation for management. He opened his mouth, but no words came. For once, he had nothing to say. I handed each board member a printed copy of my plan. Let's talk about moving this company into the future, I said. For the next 30 minutes, I laid out every failure, every bottleneck, and every opportunity he had ignored. My voice was calm, my delivery surgical. When I was done, Lauren turned to the board. Questions? There were none. They knew. The meeting adjourned. The board members filed out. Only Richard remained, his hands clenched, jaw tight, eyes burning. You think this is payback? He asked, voice low. I smiled. Oh, Richard, this isn't revenge. This is reclamation. He stood. You'll regret this. You don't know what it takes to lead this company. No, I replied, gathering my folder. But I do know what happens when you don't. And I know exactly what kind of wreckage that leaves behind. I've already started cleaning it up. Enjoy your little power trip, he sneered. I tilted my head. Funny. That's exactly what you called my resignation. Then I walked out, leaving him behind, stripped of control, of allies, and of excuses. By mid-afternoon, word had spread. Lisa showed up at my door, Hi, she said, awkward, uncertain. I heard you're back. I am. Her eyes darted to the seat across from my desk. May I? I nodded. She sat, fiddling with her bracelet. I want to apologize, she said, for everything. I raised an eyebrow. Everything? Lisa swallowed hard. I didn't know Richard had promised you the promotion. I thought I was just lucky that I was being recognized, but after you left, it became clear. I said nothing. I was in over my head, still am. I'm not ready for that role. He set me up to fail. He used you, I said, and you let him. Lisa's face crumpled slightly. I know, and I'm sorry, he didn't deserve that. No, I didn't, I agreed. A beat passed. Can I ask something? She said softly. I nodded. Are you going to fire me? I leaned back, considering. She looked nervous, rightfully so, but for the first time she wasn't arrogant. She was human. No, I said at last, but the senior manager role is being reassigned. You'll report to my new ops lead. Relief and shame flickered across her face. Thank you, she said, barely above a whisper. I nodded once. Don't waste the second chance. That evening, I stood by my office window, watching the city bathe in twilight. Behind me, the office had emptied. Quiet now, peaceful. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. Richard just cleaned out his office. Security walked him out. I took a slow breath. Not satisfaction, not victory. Just peace. When I resigned weeks ago, I thought I'd lost something. But now I realized I'd gained everything that mattered. Not a title, not power, but the knowledge that I didn't have to fight for scraps of respect anymore. I had built something better. And now I was going to rebuild this company. On my terms. That weekend, as I sat in my favorite cafe sipping a well-earned cappuccino, I opened my laptop and glanced at the top of my notes for Grantham's new company values. At the very top, in bold, I typed, "Value people before titles." I smiled. Let them take notes.